everybody. This is Jenny,
And I'm Jess.
and this is A Walk in the Woods at Midnight. This is our show that we do where we review but more analyze films that you guys can find on usually Netflix, Hulu, and it might even be something that you've already seen that we're just taking another look at, and maybe it'll inspire you to watch it again. So this week we watched a film, is an Israeli film called the Golem, although I'm sure we'll just slip into calling it the Golem because of Lord of the Rings. Isn't that
That's how I always say it, the Golem.
okay?
But I'm sure we can. You can say the Golem, and I'll just say the Golem. It's fine.
That's fine.
We're
you
fine.
guys know it means the same thing.
Right.
So this is a film that came out in 2019, and while it came out in theaters, I think in a very limited release, it really was kind of like straight to kind of like straight to Netflix and streaming services, basically. So this was a film directed by Doran and Yoav Paz, and people, please feel free to correct me with that because it's, I believe, an Israeli name, and which I don't necessarily, and so I don't necessarily know how to pronounce it, but and it is set in the 17th century, I believe. Yeah. And because I remember reading something where they were like, they didn't have kerosene lamps in the 1700s or something, and I was like, who knew details? But it's based on an old Israeli folk tale, which is, it's essentially about a like creating a force, like an actual thing from the earth to come and protect you or your community. And so that's basically what happens in the film. It is set in Germany. I believe it's based on
Lithuania.
Oh, Lithuania. Thank you. Yes. It's I think it's based on, or not even necessarily based on, but in 1915, there was a film. It was like I don't know, it was like really short, I guess. And it was a German film on the same topic. So some people have linked those.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I honestly, this is embarrassing to say, but I really didn't even know that they had film yet invented in 1915. That seems a little early to me, but maybe not. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, contrary to popular belief, I wasn't alive back then, so I can't say.
So this was, this is, I guess, just a really popular kind of, not fairy tale really, but folk tale, I guess, in the Israeli culture. So I wanted to just kind of have you give kind of like a quick little overview of what you thought of the film, like just like first general impressions.
Well, I realized that sitting through this afterwards, I thought that, what we like to watch is really scary movies. Mm-hmm. And this one wasn't particularly scary. And I realized that I'm not the target audience for this movie, that this movie is targeted. It's an Israeli movie, and this is targeted, I think, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
I think this is targeted for Jewish people and the Jewish culture. Okay. Because of the nature, the history of Jewish people is, first of all, it's going to be a horror movie to Jewish people anyway, saying the words Eastern Europe and 17th century. Mm-hmm. Because that you saw in the movie that the Black Plague was being blamed on Jews anyway. Mm-hmm. Jews have to move their villages and be miles away from and be self-sustaining from any type of Gentile community because they get blamed for things like the Black Plague when they're all they want to do is mind their own business, be left alone, and they just want to just be left to their own devices. But they get blamed for the Black Plague anyway, as you saw in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a horror movie for Jewish people because I think the hair on the back of the necks of Jewish people gets raised up when you think of Eastern Europe in the 1700s, because every story ends in a pogrom or a village getting set on fire. Every Jewish story in history ends up that way up until the creation of Israel. And Israel's only 10 years older than I am. And I don't know how that story is going to end, because there's always been conflict over Israel. So I can see how this is more of a horror story for the Jewish culture and Jewish people, because of the history of Jewish people constantly being blamed and attacked for nothing other than being Jewish. And so after the movie got done, because it's really not terribly scary to I'll fully admit that I'm as waspy as it gets. I am. The only way I could be any waspier is if I was like born in Connecticut and went to prep school and then Yale or something. I grew up in Northern California, so I only know about pogroms and things because I had Jewish friends and I read history and know about culture. But
Mm-hmm.
I can see how this would be a horror movie for Jewish people, because this is their history, and they have been attacked, and um, made scapegoats for their entire existence. And so I can see how this movie would have a particular resonance with them.
I can see, I understand what you're saying, and I can see that there would be a particular resonance there. But I think though that it does speak, though. I don't think it's necessarily just for those folks. I think it's for I think that it speaks to some really universal themes, though, that unfortunately this ethnic group has suffered for, and religious group has suffered for a long time. But I definitely saw some things like, for me, a big theme in there for sure was motherhood.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like that was, to me, that really struck me. Also, just any kind of, one of the reasons why they didn't have the plague was because they were pushed out so far away. And, it was, and I don't really necessarily know what that means within the context of what you were talking about necessarily, but it's definitely like a feeling of this kind of like displacement. Mm-hmm. And being sort of isolated, and then having something or someone come into that sort of safe space and really screw with it,
Right.
So for me, a lot of that was, there were a lot of themes within the story itself, in addition to kind of like that larger piece that you were talking about. Like within there was like the theme of like family, and what does it mean? What does it mean to be close? And how far do you go for your family? And, for me, it was very much like, I felt like, here's this woman who lost her son when he was maybe 8 or 10 or something. And he was a little boy, and he drowned, and she was married, and she was using some sort of early birth control from kind of like the village, you know, witch apothecary kind of thing, and she had been trying not to have children. Her husband didn't really realize that's what she was doing. He was
Yeah,
really wanting
I
to
have
have
a
one.
question about that.
Yeah.
I have two questions about that. One, why would she do that? And the second thing was when the golem first shows up and he goes looking underneath like a couch, does he find some sort of talisman or something to keep away children or something? He
Oh,
the violin falls to the floor. He looks underneath the couch and he finds something.
that's the little, like, the potion or the tincture or whatever that she
Oh,
takes. Remember at the beginning, like, she
yeah,
was
when
in
she
the shack with, like, that witch woman, whatever.
right.
She's like this mystical woman, and she had her kind of, she was in a sort of a gynecological
Yeah,
position.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So she was sort of like just checking, and she said, "Here you go. Like, here's your little," is like a little mixture of something
So
that she
she's
would put in.
actively trying not to have children.
That's right, because losing that child was so horribly traumatic for her that she felt like she didn't, she's like, I think she says it at some point in one way or another to her husband, but it wasn't stated really, really overtly, but basically like, I can't suffer that loss again. Like, I just cannot
Oh,
take it.
okay.
So so basically she, like, oh, so we should probably also say that she, at one point we were kind of talking a little bit about the plague and what was going on. The I guess the local Gentile population starts to infiltrate their village a little bit because they are all dying of the plague, and they do blame the villagers for the plague outbreak. And so they were sort of like, the guy comes in, like the local, I don't know, tough guy comes in holding
Yeah.
his daughter. She's dying, and he's like, basically, like, fix her. Like, you guys put this spell, which obviously they didn't. But you guys cast this spell of the plague, so fix my daughter. And if you can't fix her, then I'll burn your village to the ground or whatever. And so it's interesting because they give the girl to this that woman who is the mystical kind of witch. They give the child to her, and she nurses the child. And the way that the village tries to, the main character, the mother who's lost her child, wants to fight back. Like, she's really, really upset. She's always, it's a very patriarchal
Right.
culture, just like everything was back then, really. And
Especially in the Jewish community. Yeah.
yeah. And so she would listen through the floor of like the, I don't know, early like
The
synagogue kind of place.
yeah, the rabbinical studies group.
Yes,
And
yeah,
her husband would smuggle her the Kabbalah books to study the mystical. That's how she learns how to create the golem,
yeah,
studying all the mystical Kabbalah books that he brings her
yeah.
on the
Which is
side.
really kind of a cool thing
Yeah.
on its own. And I have a weird affection for when in movies, when they do research. It's so exciting to me. So her sitting there when she decides she wants to make this protector. She's like sitting there with the Kabbalah, trying to figure out, like, using the red strings to kind of like try to find the hidden name of God, I think it is,
Right.
within the book. And it was just so cool to watch that, because I really didn't know very much about Kabbalah, and I'm sure this movie is probably not a great historical record of what it is and what it involves. But it was cool enough for me to kind of go like, wow, this is really kind of an awesome thing. I don't know. It's really kind of fun to watch her do that.
Yeah, and when she's under the floorboard while the rabbi is talking to his students, she knows more than the students do. She's the one that retains all the knowledge and knows, I mean, just about the basic uh, Jewish studies. She's the one that remembers and retains all the knowledge and knows even more than the students. And
Yeah.
she's the one that really has all the knowledge anyway. And so when the threat comes to the town, she's all revved up and ready to create this thing.
Yeah, because she knows she can, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, that was kind of a fun piece of it that, she was this, that, I mean, she was smuggling knowledge. It was
Yeah.
such a
Good way to
cool
put it.
idea. Yeah. And, and it was kind of interesting. I don't quite know what this means exactly, but okay. So the village was very focused on what the rabbi was saying, which was basically like, this is, like, we've had it basically like the Gentiles have this plague. There's this girl here. She's going to die. She was brought in from the Gentile village. We have to pray to God. We have to like be in mourning, and we have to pray in order to get this, to get her to be well.
Mm-hmm.
So she does. I mean, so that's kind of their tack. And then, meanwhile, the main character, the mother, is what are you doing?
Sorry?
Are you reading something?
I was looking at my notes. Why?
I thought you were like on your phone while I was talking. Like, oh my God!
I was on my phone because I looked up the Golem, and it turns out the first Golem created was Joseph, named Joseph, which is what their son's name was too.
Yes, nice. So you were
I did some
researching
research too.
on the fly. I
did. I did that earlier, and I wanted to have that ready to go. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It wasn't like I was playing.
I thought you were playing like Space Invaders.
No, it wasn't like phone. I was doing actual research. No, I wasn't doing.
Oh, that's okay.
So I just noticed the coincidence that they named him Joseph, and the first Golem that was created in the folklore was also named Joseph.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was just playing, Space Invaders on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. But I was just kind of like thinking about that, the fact that, she was the one who was worked up, and she was inflamed over this. And the fact that clearly that creating a golem and using that knowledge was a really bad idea. And so on the one hand, they always have this kind of double bind in these films. I think it's a little difficult because, so basically, if you think about it all, there's a weird message in there where it's like women really shouldn't learn because they get emotional. Oh. They create golems. And then and then the whole town burns to the ground, so I know that wasn't really necessarily an overt thing, but it just, as a woman, like a lot of times, like I'll look at these things and I'll be like, wait, what the hell are they what are they doing here?
That is interesting. I didn't pick up on that. That's interesting. I'm glad that we have the two different perspectives on this.
Yeah.
Because I did not pick up on that. And I think that's really interesting that you did.
It's kind of hard to have, because I understand like the need to have a female lead is kind of a cool new thing for horror movies in a way. I mean, the woman is always kind of only the lead in that she is the kind of piece of meat that is, being hunted or whatever in horror films. So there's that kind of tradition, which is kind of honestly a little boring to me, but these are much more interesting. And in order to be kind of the bad guy or the non-victim, you kind of have to do something wrong. And it's weird because there are so many layers of history with women that it's kind of difficult to either make them purely bad or purely good, or it's just an interesting thing that I always notice. I don't know if I don't know how I would have handled it differently, honestly. It's a little bit of a bind, because there's like, what are you going to do then? Never have a female lead, because it could get like funky and say something different, So I definitely sympathize with that. It was kind of the same with the girl from what we reviewed last week. An
Oculus.
Oculus. Yeah. Like she was crazy. She was single-minded, but
Yeah, but
so
you picked up something that I didn't on her either when she was walking in the office fiercely single-mindedly with that ponytail thwacking back and forth, and I didn't pick up on that. So I thought that was a great pickup on your part there with
thanks.
that.
Yeah, yeah. It was, and this one, just like visually speaking, was, I thought, really beautiful too. Like it was very atmospheric. It was I did actually feel like, horror movies in general don't typically get a massive budget. So like a lot of times to get things on a very low budget, to get things to look a certain way or have an authenticity, they don't get giant budgets to do big things. Almost never, they almost never get that. So whenever like scenically something looks really cool, I'm kind of like, nice job.
Yeah.
You guys didn't have a lot of resources there. So that's,
Yeah, well, they did a nice job recreating the time period.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very effective. It was certainly, they certainly created a horror element. To me, was those Black Plague masks, with the pointy thing with the eyes. I've always been fascinated for some reason by the Black Plague. And so I'm familiar.
Too.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I really like to read about it. It just is interesting to me. And so when that rider came to the village, to me, that was horrifying, because I know what it signaled. It means he's bringing it to the village in some shape or form.
Yeah.
It means bad news for the village. And to me, that was one of the scarier moments, because he interrupts this celebration, this wedding, this almost festival-like atmosphere, where they had this little island of protection, and they had their farm life, the rabbinical studies, and everybody was getting along, and everything was fine. And all of a sudden, the real world intrudes just really violently into this celebration, and things go pear-shaped from there, because you're not going to be curing the Black Plague back in the 16th century, 17th century.
Right.
And we know it's going to end horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Starting then.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That is so terrifying in and of itself, when he kind of walks up and that is pretty mortifying. And those masks, did you ever research those? They almost look like bird masks.
Yeah. What is the point? What is the point of those?
So it was to keep germs out, as well as they kind of knew how I don't know that they knew exactly what was what was causing the plague, but I know that they knew to kind of protect themselves.
Yeah.
And these doctors would wear these masks, and they were so long like that because they would put flowers, or petals, like flower petals in there, because the stench of people sort of rotting almost was so strong. And they used to wear these full on super heavy cloaks and stuff, and gloves, and nothing would, and then they would have a lot of times a stick, almost and so they would, no joke, they would check the people and stuff without touching them, without getting very close, using the stick to move clothing, or to see what was going on. So early medicine, it's medieval medicine is fascinating to me. I've done way too much research on weird medical facts, modern and older. So we can have a fun chat about that sometime.
That'd be cool. I wonder if in 200 years people are going to be doing a chat like this and going, can you believe they used to use chemotherapy and radiation on cancer patients? What barbarians, when they obviously could have gone blah, 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 and the cancer would have been immediately cured. They actually poured chemicals and chemotherapy, whether that's just barbaric.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They will. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. It's so weird when you get to like a physical, like a human body. It's so complicated and weird and, delicate and squishy. I mean, it's so strange. This is on a totally different note, but I just have to say, if you're ever in Chicago, I'll count it as there's a history of surgery museum here, which is right by a Northwestern hospital, is a big hospital in the Midwest. It's right near their campus in downtown Chicago. And so it's a very beautiful little area. And they have this museum, which is unbelievable. I mean, it actually, like, doctors will come through, and like medical students will come from other countries to come to see it and everything. They have like an old iron lung there. They have early prosthetic like eyes and legs, and they have like they literally have like this almost like a bucket full, like a clear glass thing of gallstones that they've been taken up. And I mean, some of them are giant, like
oh, weird.
It is so cool though. I mean, and then they would
You're the best. I have the best partner for this show.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody enjoys it. Like, and I can't take my husband there. I can't take Eric there because he would just throw up all over the place.
Okay, when I visit, you can take me.
Oh, I'd love that. Yes.
Okay, good.
That would be fantastic. It's such a cool place. So I just had to say that, and it's not done it's sort of like it is what it is. It's not like done up to be this creepy thing at all. Yeah. But it's just, there are early drawings of like what they thought like the female reproductive system looked like, or the male one. It's so strange, but unbelievable, cool stuff. Just trying to learn about like what's inside of us and why and how does it function and things like that.
Yeah.
So, well, I took us way off the track. I'm so sorry.
And I'll end it with this, but I know 200 years from now they're going to look back at us and think how barbaric we are. But we're still in the infancy, and we're fortunate to be in the infancy of anesthesia, because I mean, all you have to do is look back at the Civil War and think of how barbaric that was.
Yeah.
How awful the injuries were, and how they couldn't put them under for any of that stuff.
Oh.
And how that was really only, that wasn't even how, I mean, that was the 1865. So I'm not good at math. So that's 150 years ago or whatever it was.
It's crazy.
And even at the turn of the century, I don't know when, I don't know when,
anesthesia was invented?
Yeah, any kind of anesthesia was invented. And I'm not even thinking about something miraculous like penicillin, or the concept of washing your hands to keep people from getting infected.
Yeah.
But I've had enough surgeries done on me in the past 10 years, just from various things done, and with pain medicine and anesthesia, where I'm thinking, this is stuff that 100 years ago, back in the 1915s or something.
Yeah.
Ugh. I don't know. Was it raw ether or chloroform or something? I don't know. How would you knock somebody out for this?
I mean, well, very early on, maybe liquor would be the main thing.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think you would have to get them super drunk, and still all they are is drunk. They can still feel pain.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I mean, really, it's wow. I don't even, how did we get here? Oh,
I don't
Black
know.
Plague. That's how we
Yeah, the
got here,
Black
Black Plague.
Plague.
So fascinating though, super, like, it is fascinating. But
Yeah, we can circle back to the Golem now, but I think that, yeah, the Black Plague has always interested me.
it really is. It
Yeah.
really is.
I have a book on it that I read, and if you haven't read it, I'll go up after this and text you the name of it. It was really interesting.
Okay, you should look it up and then write it in the like underneath like our video when we talk about it, and then
Oh,
just
in case
list the
anybody
names
else wants
in
to
case
know?
anybody else wants to know.
Okay,
In case anybody
good.
else has a similar affinity for the Black Plague.
Ghoulish interest in history.
So what were we talking about?
Well,
We were
the
talking early on.
Golem gets created, is named Joseph,
Yes.
starts murdering her enemies accidentally and on purpose.
He protects
He protects
her
her.
in particular. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's and
A little boy that she names Joseph. Does she name him Joseph?
she names him. Well, she
Because
starts
that was
at least to call him Joseph because that was her son who
right,
died, his name, and he looked just like him.
right.
And so that was also interesting because it really like brought up, this idea of it's kind of like one of those things where if you think about it a little more abstractly, it's like what I really was thinking was, serial killers have mothers too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was creepy to me because it was like, what, really, if you think about this metaphorically, it's like if you have this child who is a little dangerous or out of control, but you love him so much or her so much that it's like, don't worry, like I can control him.
yeah.
I think about that a lot because I just think about, because also this is so weird. I can't even believe this is like a confessional. I also am very like it's very weirdly interesting and strange. Like all of the like serial killers. I think a lot of people have that, especially now where you like sort of like you can learn about them and I don't know. Then there are all of these psychological things you can contemplate or whatever. But I when I saw that and I saw how sort of like in love she was with him until
Mm-hmm.
until she finally knew that he had to like go away, like he had to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't until the entire town burned it to the ground. And
Right. But something also happens. She transforms a little bit with the creation of him because um, she's always under pressure to have another child. And the sex they have is really perfunctory, where they have it. There's really no joy in it.
business.
Right. It's just to create another child. After the Golem comes in, after the husband's left, due to the discovery of of the potion to keep her from having children, the husband comes back, has dinner. She said, and the Golem is sitting there at the table. The Golem, by the way, is like a 10-year-old child. The Golem is sitting there. She sends the Golem up to bed. And then they just have this wild sex that she's totally into.
Yeah.
And she's somehow suddenly transformed into, and as far as I know, she doesn't use the ointment or tincture at that point. She's transformed herself by this child, this a Golem rather.
Yeah. So it's almost as though it was almost like her really diving into and relishing this welcoming back of her child in a way. It's almost like here's who she would be, maybe times 12.
Yeah.
If the boy had actually lived.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that may be what it means. Maybe there's another meaning that I'm not thinking of, but that is a really important thing that you just mentioned about that.
I'm guessing it made her feel whole again.
Yeah.
Um, maybe she just felt complete again, and it gave her joy again. But she was a completely different person. There was much more of a spark of life and joy in her with her relationship with her husband
Hmm.
in the moments of those particular scenes.
Yeah.
um, and um, of course it just the movie ended how it had to end. I mean, there was no other way for that particular movie to end.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean,
I mean, unless she had like walked off with him to like, wreak further havoc on the earth. But
yeah, if I mean, it's the irony, of course, is they try to destroy the Golem just when they need him most, as the village is getting invaded by the outsiders. But that's the way it goes, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. And he sort of was indiscriminately
Right.
killing people. But it's so it really it's kind what another thing that I thought was really interesting is that the whole town, as sort of like suggested by the rabbi and all of the people follow his advice, they were all sort of like praying and being very and getting like it was like they had this very passive kind of strength, right? And believing in
Mm-hmm.
God and
Mm-hmm.
praying and really what I thought was kind of an interesting thing is that the girl got better enough. The girl with the plague
Right.
got better enough that she actually was able to stand up. Do you remember this? She was
Yeah.
out on the porch standing up, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like it's the way that I took it was it's working.
Mm-hmm.
It's
The
working.
prayer.
That's working. The prayer is working.
Yeah.
Yes. And taking that kind of like I was going to say turn the other cheek, but I guess it's something Jesus said. But whatever,
Well,
taking
I
a more passive like
right.
was actually working, and until the until like the golem was sort of let loose, and then it took this different turn.
Mm-hmm.
So should have listened to the rabbi. Hindsight is 2020, I guess.
Yeah. So, did you like it enough to recommend it on any level, or how did you feel about it?
I did like it a lot. I mean, I'd like to say though too that I have almost like the way that I think about like movie recommendations is this. It's like there are movies that are very artistic that you sort of go like this was an excellent movie. But then there are like horror films that are on such a low budget and that are being churned out constantly, and so many of
Yeah.
them are bad that when you find one that's even kind of good, it's like incredible. It's like, oh my God, this isn't terrible. Like I didn't want to, like tear my hair out and turn it off and have to page through 20 other pages of, possible horror films to watch. I would say, yeah, I would recommend this one. I thought it was worth it. I loved the folktale. I loved what they
Mhm.
did with the Kabbalah. I thought it was really kind of mystical and interesting. I loved the idea of that kind of like, what does it mean to be a mother, and what is it like, how does a child relate to you as a mother, as a father, as a family, as a community? So I thought it was pretty smart.
Yeah, I agree with you on absolutely everything you said. The only thing I would add is I would not recommend it as a scary slash horror movie. I would recommend it as a piece of historical fiction movie, because I didn't think there
Interesting.
was anything
Okay.
scary about it. I
Sort of
would,
like mystical historical fiction.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, good. It was definitely worth watching.
Yes. Great. Okay. Yeah.
But
So
I have
we recommend.
but I have extremely high hopes for next week's movie.
Yes. Tell everybody what it is.
It is called The Blackcoat's Daughter, and two girls parents somehow forget to pick them up from private school at winter break, and there's a mysterious presence, an unseen presence, my favorite thing, an unseen presence that starts stalking them at this school, and it's gotten really high marks from everything I've read, like Paste Magazine and Thrill List and everything else. So
that's really exciting. I am very excited for next week too.
And Eric should be excited because it's free on Netflix. You don't have to pay for it.
Yes, my husband's extremely cheap. Like for some reason, you don't waste food, you don't spend money on movies when you have a streaming service. It drives me nuts.
That is funny.
Yeah. He's lots of fun.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to all the viewers out there who watched. We appreciate your support. Feel free to leave comments. Please hit the like button. Please feel to subscribe to OmniDog's Vault. And on behalf of Jenny and myself, peace and love, peace and love. We will see you again next week.